Kia ora all, and welcome to the Huddy Hui live on Huddy Sports. It is fantastic to have you watching as always. We're an hour earlier tonight. It makes no difference. It's because rugby is almost here. Almost here. The first round of Wellington Club Rugby and also rugby across the Wellington region. Joining me tonight as always, it's Adam Julian. Adam, we saw the return of big crowds at Super Rugby last week. And when we watched some pre-season games last week around Wellington, there were some decent crowds as well.
It was wonderful to see people back out enjoying rugby, conversing with each other. But there are some questions that emerged after the lockdown. Is offending our social distancing? And is it better to see the red screen crawler on Sky at halftime or on the New Zealand Herald? I'm not sure.
Well, that's exactly right. And of course, the Huddy Hui and Huddy Sports has grown over the last 2 weeks. Not only can you find us on Facebook and Instagram, you can now find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and very soon we'll be on iHeartRadio. We're certainly growing at them. It's unreal.
It's very encouraging, and we have plans to take over Mars, so don't panic, those of you outside of the Earth part of the solar system.
Yeah, watch out, Elon Musk. But no doubt we've got a very special guest tonight. Of course, over the last year or so, he's brought out a lot of videos campaigning to promote the awareness of depression with farmers and rugby. And of course, he signed up for the Hurricanes as a schoolboy for 3 years and made his debut in 2017 and had the lucky appearance for 20 minutes being captain. And we'll talk to him tonight. He also has played for Hawke's Bay and Canterbury and was also the head boy at Lindisfarne College in the Hawke's Bay. Kia ora, Hugh Renton. Thank you for coming on the Huddy Hui tonight. Tell us what your campaign is all about.
Well, the campaign, I guess, it's just a connection between rugby and farming for me personally. It's just the backgrounds that I've been a part of, and my family has faced a terrible thing in suicide, which is sort of just decimated our family. So it's really, plus Hawke's Bay is facing a really tough time in farming. I mean, it's a drought up there, but now it's heading into winter and there's no grass or supplement feed or anything like that. And, with those challenging times, it's hard. So it's just basically making a connection between rugby and farming and just to support each other and just to be like, hey, look, we're thinking of you and we care about you. And when I think about my dad's memory and stuff, we used to always watch rugby and have that connection to rugby. So if we got a message from an All Black captain or something like that, showing support, I mean, that goes a long way just to boost your morale for a little bit. That might just help you get through your day. So that's what it's about.
So tell us, with your work so far, Hugh, how has the perception of farmers changed during the last few years?
How's the perception changed?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if it's just happened in the last few years. I'm just thinking of me personally. I see that farmers face a lot of negative feedback throughout the media, really. And from my perspective, a lot of them are just really good people that are just trying to do a good job and provide an income. And New Zealand farming in general has been a backbone of New Zealand for a very long time. So how that's changed, I guess there's definitely more people who are advanced and know the details of that. But from our perspective, I think there's a lot of negative press about farmers or negative perspective about farmers, I should say. And but there's a lot of positive things they're doing, and they're humans too, and they're just trying to provide for their families, a lot of them. So
this drought in the Hawke's Bay, just how bad has it been compared to other negative experiences in your farming background?
Well, I'm not a farmer for one, Adam, so I can't really speak to being on the ground, and I haven't lived in Hawke's Bay for a few years now, but my mother still farms there and runs the family farm. And there's been talk of this drought being, one of the worst in 80 years or whatever. There's for example, I was speaking to one of Mum's cousins, and rivers in Hawke's Bay that haven't gone dry for 80 years have gone dry. So, I mean, if that's a perspective, that can be one. How tough it is. I mean, Hawke's Bay, being the east coast, always faces dry periods, and it's been like that, probably for about 7 of the last 12 years, you could say. And so this one's different. Yeah, it's different. It's because it's prolonged so long, and there's COVID restrictions around the meatworks. I mean, now, people can't process their stock. They can't get rid of their stock, and then they can't feed their stock, and so it's just tough times all around, really, and that's adds to it.
And so these videos that have been broadcast, where can people find them, and who's featured so far?
Well, I launched them on my Instagram personally, just at Hugh Renton on Instagram, and my Facebook Hugh Renton, and that's just a starting point. But they've been shared from NZ Farming through to other Facebook pages as well, so people can find them or search them from my name or anyway. I mean, the news did well to put the message out there, and that's another aspect. I mean, if I think about my own dad's perspective, he wasn't really on social media, and so finding a video or anything like that wasn't really a reality. So, I mean, any sorts of ways that they can get out there would be much appreciated if it helps. Who's featured? Well, we started with Sam Kame as an All Black captain, and then Dane Coles put his hand up and straight away, and then Israel Dag, and then hopefully a few All Blacks have come, so I'll hopefully release those videos over the next few weeks, just when they come in and edits are done, and then they can be released, and just to give a positive message, throughout the week, a couple times a week, and go from there.
And what's the feedback been so far? Have you had personal accounts from farmers who have received these messages helping them out?
Yeah, well, there's been a wide range of messages, really, and all positive too. And I mean, I won't go into details of people so I don't identify them or anything, but there have been people sort of talk about the conversation starting in their family, or the conversation around how hard they're working, or the situations that they're in their family. So definitely it's helped. And the segment that was with One News got into the homes, and yeah, I've had a lot of messages from that people are starting to talk, which is good.
Let's talk about depression. What is depression, and what are your strategies for dealing with it? Because there's a lot of public recognition about depression, but sometimes I think a lot of people don't actually know what it is.
Well, I'd firstly like to say I'm no expert, and I can't make an expert opinion on that at all. And if people are concerned or whatever, they need to go to a professional. For me personally, I'm still learning. How my mind thinks, situations that I'm in, and I'm still young, so I haven't been in a lot of situations that may have brought this out. I think trying to keep connected and keeping a positive attitude has helped in my struggles personally, and also trying to control things that you're trying to control has helped in my rugby and my rugby career. If you can take an opportunity and put your hand up and control that, then that's good, but you can't always control when those opportunities come. So that might be an example. Just control what you can control, and try to stay calm, and even practice a bit of trying to be present or meditate or anything just to get you through.
Those are important messages, Hugh, and for everyone else out there. Yeah, if you're watching this now or afterwards, feel free to come back and watch it. These are all important facts. And for the farmers out there, as we, Adam and I agree, are the backbone of our society and deserve all the support they can get. So let's go back to your time at Lindisfarne, Hugh. Tell us about your time there. Of course, you were head boy, and also you were in the quite unique position where you were selected to the Hurricanes as a schoolboy. Tell us about that.
Yes, I spent 5 years at Lindisfarne College here in Hastings as farmers, about 30-40 minutes inland of Hastings. It was the school that I wanted to go to, and mainly my parents wanted me to get a good education first, not always rugby. It was always, get your education. So I actually applied for Lindisfarne, and I didn't get in straight away, to be honest. I was second on the waiting list, and didn't know what to do. And as a farming kid living out of town, it's pretty hard to go to day school or whatever. So especially with working parents who work at home, not in town. But I managed to get into Lindisfarne and went straight into boarding, which was one of the best times of my life, to be honest. And I made a lot of lifelong mates there at boarding school. I probably can't say too many things that we got up to, but I tell you what, we did a lot of growing and a lot of fighting and a lot of wrestling and boy play and all that, which was always pretty rough and tumble, but it was good fun. And then just basically tried to get my studies going as much as possible, and then rugby just sort of year 10, and then sort of talking and and having mentors there at Lindisfarne, Grant Gilbert, Carl Jones, who was New Zealand Secondary Schools coach. He coached TJ Perenara and those boys, and Grant Gilbert coached Israel Dagg, and then Ben Spriggans at the time was first 15 coach. So tried to sneak in there at year 11, and yeah, that was a fun experience. I mean, I was pretty determined in year 10 after getting dropped from Hawke's Bay under 16s to really put my hand up and just basically went training, tried to train as hard as possible, and then went into year 11 and managed to go all right in year 11, and then that followed through to year 12, and then year 12 I managed to make Hurricanes under 18s or Hurricane secondary schools, and went all right in that, and was fortunate enough that I was chosen for captain for that, and we won the game against the Chiefs. I think we won like 30 to 10 or 35-10 or something like that. And yeah, basically went from there, and then I got a really bad injury, and then basically didn't play for another 3 or something years. But in that time, sort of just tried to have the blueprint to try to make professional rugby and tried to follow what I could and learn and grow, and then was in talks with Hurricanes and managed. They said, hey, look, we can't make any guarantees about getting you back playing rugby or whatever, but we'd like to give it a go. And to their credit, they managed to work something that I signed with them and went down there after school. Still hadn't played any rugby for a year at this time, and then still didn't play any rugby at all for another year, first year out of school, and then didn't play any rugby for another half a year after that, and then basically just jumped in and tried to learn and grow and just risk it with my body really and my shoulder, and then managed to get a few games, and then had 2017 there, and there were some good guys in the team, and I was competing and trying to compete, and then got a wee opportunity there and did all right, and then that sort of finished. I mean, I wasn't the best rugby player in the world at that time. I had a lot of work-ons and a lot to do, and the team wanted to do what they wanted to do, and so they chose not to re-sign me, and that was their decision at the time. I was obviously gutting, but and then Hawke's Bay was the same. Didn't play for them in 2015. Played a couple of games in 2016, and my shoulder was reoccurring, and then 2017 had a full season with them and felt like I went all right, and had some positive stuff, and then basically at the end of 2017 was probably in terms of rugby career and life, probably a hard patch. I mean, Hurricanes had finished the contracts there. Hawke's Bay had finished the contracts there. I had no degree in rugby, and my dad just passed away to suicide, and mum had taken over the family farm then. Mum and dad were obviously together and married, and mum just continued to do what they did. And then I made a decision, to leave. To basically try to be my best in what I wanted to be.
And so you relocated to Christchurch in 2017, but I want you to explain more about your unique shoulder injury, because that's a very unusual injury that you had.
Yeah, I mean, the shoulder injury it seems like a different world now. It was pretty tough. Basically in school, played a game and then did something to my neck and shoulder area, but wasn't really aware of it. Went to the doctor and the specialists and stuff, and they did scans and everything. And I remember them coming to the doctor and coming out of the doctor, and coming into the room and coming out, having conversations, and they were they couldn't work out what was wrong with it, and then sort of played the next game and couldn't really train and play the next game. This is for Hawke's Bay under 18s at the time in 2013, and then basically came back after one game, and then my arm just completely basically shut down, and it took a long time to figure out what had happened. They said, you'll be back in a week or 2 weeks or a month, and then that extended to a couple months, and then that extended to 6 months, and then 2 years, and then 2.5 years, almost 3 years of dealing with it. But basically what it was a brachial plexus nerve injury, nerve palsy, long thoracic nerve was the one that died. And so there's been a couple of rugby league players and rugby players who have done it, and basically the nerves in C5, 6, and 7, instead of pulling out and getting detached from my spine, because if that happened, my arm would be dead and stay dead, but they pulled out and stretched, but they didn't completely detach. And as they stretched, they died, and then had to regrow all again. But there's no guarantees, there's no nothing, so it's pretty unique. other injuries because you have no return to play, you have no timeline, no guarantees. My arm wasted away, my right arm wasted away there. I had no strength, couldn't lift up my arm. I was like this for bloody ages, couldn't speak on the phone. My bicep and all my tricep was just destroyed, and soreness and tightness. And so there's no way you're going to be playing rugby. I mean, I couldn't even run for a year, couldn't do anything for a year, for a whole final year at school. So, I mean, trying to play rugby with that was near impossible, but put some good people around me and the Hurricanes and the physio there, Cam down there, and Dr. Theodorfing, they helped me a lot there. And, basically, I mean, it was shut off and came back and shut off, post 2 years. And then basically we just said, all right, we'll give it a crack and went for it. And it managed to sort of hold on all right. So, and then probably took another year to get strong enough to play actual professional rugby. And
professional rugby can be a brutal, cold world. Are you surprised in hindsight that the Hurricanes showed so much loyalty? And tell us about your 20 minutes for the Hurricanes in 2017, because you were the captain.
Well, it wasn't when I went straight on, I don't think. To be fair, I don't really remember what was happening. You'd know more about that than me, Adam. But I came on, replaced Artie Severe for the last 15, 20 minutes or something. And just was going all right and pretty pumped up, and was against the Cheetahs and made a couple of runs. And then something happened, and Mark Abbott had just come on, and he said, "Oh, Hugh, Chris Boyd said you're captain for the last 15 or whatever." And I was like, "Oh, what?" So just spoke to, I guess no one wanted to speak to the ref or something, or I don't know. So had to bloody do that thingy and finished the game. But that was a pretty cool experience, obviously making your debut for a team that you every single week you hoped that you would play and you trained and worked hard to play for, and that was every single week for 3 years. And to actually get a game was really special at the time. Yeah.
And when you were injured, who were the guys in the Hurricanes you gravitated towards most closely? Because there would have been ambitious talent chasing your spot, and they might have been like, who the hell's this kid Renton? He's been injured for 3 years, still hasn't played, and he gets a run as the captain.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure, Adam. You might know more about that than me, but all the boys at the Hurricanes were just awesome. I mean, I'm lucky that I had lots of friends through all of them, all age groups as well. But a few guys like Ricky Riccatelli and those boys always pushed really hard. And Nehi was injured at the time a little bit, and so I sort of focused on his journey a little bit and gravitated towards him and his journey. And guys like that. There are a lot that were coming through that I was just hanging out with and trying to compete with. I mean, it was pretty fun going head to head with the competitive guys like TJ Piranara or Nani Lamapi or the likes. That was always a fun time, and obviously learning from Artie Severe and Brad Shields and Callum Gibbons. I mean, those are all real awesome guys that took me under the wing. There's guys like Mikey Kainga, Reggie Goods, just really good classic boys who just, don't necessarily like you for being good at rugby, just like you for if you can add value and be a good guy. And so I think that's important in team aspects. So all those guys were pretty cool to hang around.
2017, Hugh, you won a Jubilee Cup with Old Boys University, or known as OBU, and then you moved to Christchurch, and of course you lived for the time there with Sophie Pascoe. Of course, Sophie Pascoe, the famous New Zealand swimmer. Tell us what Sophie's like, and what did you learn from her being, like a world championships winning swimmer?
Yeah, I mean, she's got a pretty unbelievable mindset in terms of just trying to dominate in the pool and dominate her competition, and to do it for that long shows that she's onto something. She had a pretty killer mindset in the pool, in the pool. So yeah, that's basically one thing I learned from her. And also, it's a pretty individual sports for me. So you've got to have a pretty strong mindset and have a pretty cool and good group around you to try to keep your mindset good to continue to push to higher and higher goals. I mean, it can't be easy. It can't be easy winning a gold medal, but then winning nine gold medals and then going for another Olympics is pretty inspirational stuff for anyone to be around.
And in terms of other individuals who have had a huge impact on your life, Dad is obviously one of them. Paul Renton very fine rugby player in his own right, 90 first-class games over the course of a decade, most of them for the Hawke's Bay. He also represented 5 New Zealand teams, including the secondary schools in Divisional 15. He had 2 All Black trials, 1987 man of the match in the first of 2 trials in World Cup year. What are some stories that you can share with us about Paul's rugby ability and his interaction with you as a son?
Yeah, well, it's quite funny. Dad never really spoke about himself and his rugby, so you telling me that I knew a few things and that, but I mean, Dad, he wouldn't share much. It wasn't about him; it was always about others, and we had a great relationship. He would never really necessarily tell me what to do on the field or anything, but he would always give me pointers and allow my game to grow. But it wasn't even rugby, it was anything we wanted to do. My parents, both Maria and Paul, were supportive of all us kids to do whatever we wanted to do, and they were drivers to do your best and do a darn good job and do well at everything and be good people. And I think, yeah, that's the relationship that we had, was just do your best and always, think of others and be a good person. And I mean, that internal drive, I think, must be from them. I think an internal drive for myself personally is the reason I can get places, and that must be from them. But I mean, it was never drilled in or forced or anything like that. I think my parents just lived it, had a pretty good perfect relationship in terms of them working together and their marriage, and then also how they lived and their standards and what they did. So I think they might have not told me anything specifically all the time, but just emulate. You just emulate what you're surrounded by. So that's the sort of relationship I had with Dad and had with Mum.
So what about your family situation now? It's been 3 years since Paul passed. What's been the hardest challenge immediately following his death, and what is the hardest thing now that it's somewhat removed from the recent past?
Your life changes, basically. I mean, life completely flips on its head and nothing makes sense anymore, and what is not basically not true or anything like that. You just have to figure out where your bearings are, where you lie, and continue to go forward. I mean, at that time, the hardest thing was obviously just not having dad around, and that's probably the same sort of thing now. I mean, it doesn't get easier or anything like that. You probably just get better at dealing with life and moving forward. But it's a pretty devastating thing for any family to go through suicide or any death or any tragedy like that. So just my heart goes out to the other families who are in those situations. But I mean, you don't always want pity. You don't want pity because you just want support and love, because your life changes. So you got to continue on, and you got to have help and support to continue on. And that was kind of, I guess, move through to the message with the farmers, was just, hey, look, farmers don't want pity. They don't want people to think they have all these mental health issues and all that sort of stuff. They just want support and love. And I'm a big believer that there needs to be some sort of change around that mental health issues or whatever, because that just stimulates negative thoughts in people's minds, from my experience talking with people. And it's more around mind health and how's your healthy mind or whatever. Physical health is there, but how healthy is your mind? And that was my example with Dad. I mean, Dad, from my experience and families, he wasn't a depressive guy, and he was one of the toughest, most resilient guys, but yet it still happened to him. So I think it's a good example, even though you don't want it to be an example, but it's an example that it can happen to anyone at any time.
So Hugh, in the background there, you've got a rugby league jersey, which is you showed us off camera before. Tell us which team it is, and who's the person that signed it for you, and the message he left.
Yeah, well, that's Jonathan Thurston, Cowboys top, so that's pretty special. And he said, "Grind now, shine later." But with it, he sent me, which I was very lucky and fortunate for. He sent me a wee video message, and it was a couple of years ago, and it was after Dad died, and he just said, "Hey, look, mate, keep your head up. Keep focusing on what you want to achieve in life, and I'm thinking of you and your family, and it must be a terrible time, but just keep going and keep grinding, and if you grind now, you can shine later throughout any adversity." And so I'm very fortunate to have that message along with another message just received from professional golfer Tony Finau.
Oh wow!
And that sort of linked in, professional sport and rugby and farming and help and support, and it's really helped me personally in my life and my situations. So I'm sure it should help and could help someone else. So I guess that's almost a perfect example of what something great that's been done to me and something that I could pass on to someone else.
Well, Hugh, we wish you well with all your future endeavours. And when can we see the next promotional of this important issue, and who's featured?
Yeah, well, we haven't confirmed anything just yet, but we're hoping to do one tonight. And there's multiple guys doing. One we're chasing is Anton, so we'll just see. We'll see if we can put it together and release it in the next coming days, or maybe even tonight. Adam, you might just have to check on your Facebook and keep up to date with that, eh?
Well, it's probably the only time I check my Facebook these days. So thanks for being with us, Hugh, and well done on this very brave and determined course of positivity that you're leading. It's not an easy subject to discuss, but we really admire you for undertaking that task, and hopefully we see you back out on the rugby field sometime soon.
Yeah. No, thank you guys. Thanks, Brad and Adam. And just quickly, it's not about me at all or anything like that. It's just about what if I can do something or help in any way and pass it on in any way. And you definitely know I'm playing rugby here in Christchurch and putting up my hand with trying to fight for Canterbury Crusaders or whatever. Basically, going good, feeling good. So Adam, keep a lookout if you want, but I know we keep in contact. But thanks very much, guys, for having me, and I'm sure we'll keep in contact.
Awesome. Take care, and just as long as you don't win.
Classic, Adam. I knew you had to get that in there. That's why I said
it. Take care and much love.
Yep. Take care, Hugh.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, Adam, what a fantastic individual Hugh Renton is. Amazing stories, and amazing what he is, his campaign is setting out to do.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Farming and rugby are two aspects of our society that are almost synonymous with each other, and both of them are suffering difficult times with the COVID-19 tragedy and the drought in Hawke's Bay, which is not an unusual occurrence. It's a familiar event for farmers dealing with the difficulties of the environment and the changes in expectations around the treatment of the environment. And Hugh conceding that he himself is not a farmer, but someone who cares very deeply about that very strong component of our society, a decent person looking to open up a conversation about a very difficult subject with a demographic of the population that doesn't necessarily find it as easy to talk as other members of our society. When we think of the farmer, we typically stereotype them as sturdy and white and earnest, and those are honourable qualities, but sometimes they're not the qualities needed to get through depression and deep issues. So Hugh, very brave, using his connections in rugby, using his intellect and using his young social networking ability to get that message through. So it was a real pleasure to share that tonight. And his father was a really decent guy. I had the good fortune of meeting Paul Renton a number of times. Hard, earnest, fair, and a very decent rugby player. Loose forward out of Rathkill College, first New Zealand secondary schools representative from that place. Played for Mid Canterbury, Hawke's Bay, and 5 New Zealand teams. In those days, it was very uncommon for someone to represent that many New Zealand teams. And in 1987 and 1988, he was an All Black trialist, which was one step removed from making the national team itself. And he scored tries in both his All Black trials and went exceedingly well, particularly in that first trial in 1987, where he actually replaced an injured teammate, Brett Pope, played a blinder, but unfortunately missed the second and final trial, which was in Whangarei. And from that second and final try, possibles versus probables, there were 12 players in the probables 15 that went on to start the World Cup final, one on June 20 against France, 29-9.
So, Adam, of course, your background for nearly a decade was covering college rugby, in particular on Sky. And, of course, You've covered a lot of history and stories around a lot of our first 15 colleges around the country. Tell us about Lindisfarne College and the Hawke's Bay.
Well, the Hawke's Bay is a real bastion of talent for secondary school rugby in New Zealand. Hastings Boys High School are the present national champions. In fact, they won in 2017 as well. Napier Boys High School have the record for attending the most national top 4 tournaments. And Lindisfarne College, tucked away in Hastings, is another very competitive force. They've produced some outstanding teams and players over the years. Hugh Renton mentioned Grant Gilbert. He coached their first 15 over 2 tenures for 24 years. Carl Jones, New Zealand Secondary Schools coach in 2010. They were unbeaten, thrashed Australia in Dunedin, where a young TJ Perenara played first 5 and was the goal kicker. But in terms of Lindisfarne personalities, their 4 most recognisable players are all Blacks. Campbell Johnson, the sturdy prop, he played a number of games for Canterbury. Tane Randall, an All Black captain who now has a competition bearing his name that Lindisfarne compete in. That's called the Central North Island Series. There are 10 teams in that competition. Israel Dagg, who's featured in one of Hugh's videos. I saw Israel Dagg play a high school match in 2005 in pouring rain against Scots College. Victor Vito was playing for Scots College, but at Lindisfarne they call it the Israel walked on water match. He scored 4 tries and was absolutely unbelievable. Top class first 11 cricketer as well, but perhaps the most devastating player they ever produced was John Timu. He scored 92 tries in 55 games for their first 15. He scored 6 tries for the Hawke's Bay under-18s against the Wellington under-18s in 1987. And, of course, he became a spectacular rugby union player with Otago and the All Blacks. And then he won a premiership with the Bulldogs in the NRL in 1995. And John Timu's son, Josh Timu, ended up at John McGlashan College in Dunedin. And that's a brother school of Lindisfarne, which is built in the Presbyterian tradition.
Well, Adam, it's we're finally here. It's round 1 of club rugby across the whole country. There we go. Yeah, exciting times. Despite the fact that there is 2 new cases of COVID, but we won't go there because we want rugby. We've waited 13 weeks for this opportunity. We're not going to let it take it away from us. And, of course, it's round 1 of the Swindale Shield, Wellington's premier club competition. And we've got a few games that we are going to talk about this weekend. And, of course, one of these, the first game we're going to talk about is going to be a Huddy Sports production this Saturday. It will either be live streamed on Facebook video or we will do a live stream via Facebook on a radio platform. And that game is going to be Oriental Rongotai versus Huddy Boys Marist at the Polo Ground at 2:45, Adam.
Can't wait for this game. Oriental Rongotai were semi-finalists last year. In fact, they've been semi-finalists in the Jubilee Cup 8 times in the last decade. Huddy Boys Marist, last year's Swindale Shield champions, narrowly missed the semi-finals. They were runners-up in the Jubilee Cup in 2017, winners in 2014. I understand that both clubs have assembled a very strong roster. Huddy Boys Marist have a huge forward pack. The Mania brothers could eat the clouds if they really desired. Jack McCormick and Jordan Gillies are outstanding combative flankers. And in the back line, Huddy Boys Marist always bring plenty of experience with Brandon Lawson, Glenn Walters and the like. Oriental Rongotai, notoriously difficult to defeat at the Polo Ground. And if you've looked outside Huddy Boys Marist, it's going to be even harder. Fetu Henry will be back for another season, we hope. Tuikana Metarao, fantastic lock forward. And there are whispers that Julian Savia and Martin Onu might turn up. They're unconfirmed. But goodness me, Brad, we'd be in for a real treat if they did make an appearance.
Well, certainly right. I commentated again on Radio Sport last year. Manonu turned out for Oriental Rongotai and the pouring rain against Northern United of the Jubilee Cup. And Orios won that day. And it was also Paulo Augustino's 200th game. And I was asked by the studio to do an interview on Manonu. Manonu said, no, I've had enough interviews in my lifetime. It's this guy's day. He's got 200 games. And, you know, that Barnonu's come a long way as a person. And what a fantastic player he has been.
Well, the thing about those two, though, is you can hardly tell them apart.
No,
they look almost the same. But, yes, that's a great compliment to Martin Onu and his humility and compassion with the individuals at the Auries Club. And 200 senior games for any club let alone one as formidable as Ori's, is a very fine achievement. Both those sides evidently in pre-season won last week, and they were 4th and 5th in the Jubilee Cup respectively last year. So that's going to be a ferociously competitive game. Hello Boys Marist against Ori's. It'll be a real treat to bring that one to you.
And out at the Petone Rec at 2:45 on Saturday is Petone versus Johnsonville. Of course, Johnsonville last year did not win a game. They came very close in the last round of the competition in the Hardin Cup. And Petone, of course, were Jubilee Cup last year. I did find it tough, but they have recruited very well in the off-season, Adam. And even Johnsonville's got a few new players there too.
Well, Petone have assembled a particularly youthful and combative forward pack. Josh Southall, Yona Apaneru and Josh Houston Tupou have transferred from the Upper Hutt Rams. I understand Vern Sisefo is involved with the Villagers as well. So that will add some energy to a pack that was sometimes creaky last year. The real strength for Petone is in the back line. Piri Peroni is a vastly underrated first five, always been a great admirer of his audacious and accurate play. Jared Adams in the midfield is a stalwart. They used to call him Rampage at Silverstream because of his errant haircuts. And Petone had one of the better finishes in the competition too in Willie Fine. Johnsonville, well, the only way forward for them is up 0-20 last year, but they'll be competitive, no doubt, in their first outing of the season.
And out at Ngāti Toa Domain, one of our famous, more favourite grounds, Adam, is Ngāti Toa Domain. Parramatta Plimpton taking on Upper Hutt Rams. Of course, Parramatta did win a few games last year, but they always push above their weight, but sometimes don't always have the cattle to last. Where Upper Hutt, well, it's been a tough time for the Upper Hutt Rams as a club lately.
And thankfully, there's some sanity finally prevailing at Upper Hutt with a number of very earnest and I believe genuine attempts to reform the behaviour out there and retrieve this missing money. Absolutely scandalous that money could go missing from a rugby club. Upper Hutt, though, have some good players. Parramatta Plimpton, though, won't make it easy for them at Ngāti Toa Domain. The likes of Shane Hedges are back, and they're a tough side to beat, particularly in heavy weather. I expect that to be a real dogfight.
Yeah, well, the amount of rain we've had in the last 3 days, Adam, and it's supposed to continue throughout till Saturday, so it's going to be some very soggy tracks out there, no doubt. Over at William Jones Park in Wainuiomata, Tawa travel over the hill to take on Wainuiomata in this fixture, Adam.
The Chris Sterling Cup at stake. Chris Sterling was the Hurricanes' high performance manager for some time and has a connection with both Wainuiomata and Tawa. Tawa, very strong side last year, lost the semi-final by 1 point to Norse, the eventual champions, but they were up by 17 at 1 point. Tawa had a good win in pre-season against Ori's last Saturday. Hugo Plummer, who's featured on this program, will be playing at lock. I understand Pati Naolofa is back, so he's going to be a real asset for Tawa, a century of games before he retired temporarily. And in the back line, Kemera Hauiti Parapara is a player who will be really looking to stake his claim for a Wellington Lions jersey this season, and also to potentially nudge into Super Rugby. Kemera, somewhat of an unforgotten name in Wellington club football. Wainuiomata, well, the intel there is that their line-out is short, but they have a very good loose forward trio potentially, and Greg Leolofi, Matt Jacobs, and Sam Smith, the young Wellington under-19 flank forward, who almost resembles Leolofi in the way he plays. And in the backs, Jason Love, one of our favourite players, returns, Yogi's boy, and there's a prospect that Peter Umaga Jensen will be released from the Hurricanes as well. Unfortunately, his brother Thomas out for the season again, but Peter looking to continue the strong form that helped carry Wainuiomata to the Jubilee Cup final last year.
And of course, the star from Palmerston North Boys is at Wainuiomata this year too, Adam, Ruben Love.
Yes, this Ruben Love is a very good player. He was good enough to represent New Zealand at age group level in cricket. He's a wicketkeeper batsman in that code and could possibly have pursued cricket as a professional option, but he got snapped up from the Wellington Rugby Academy. He's a first five fullback, quick on his feet, educated boot, and an intelligent player, not one of these flashy guys who thinks he knows it all. He's willing to work with his other players as well. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how Ruben Love fares in club rugby this season.
And out at Huddy Park is the battle between the Wellington X-Men and the Avalon Bulls. What do we expect in that match, Adam?
Well, it's a big deal 2020 for the Wellington X-Men. It's their 150th anniversary. They've lost a few players from their first fixture, which was a celebration match against Nelson College. Avalon, well, they started promisingly enough last year, but really faded away towards the end. I'm not entirely sure what the respective strengths of these two teams are, but I suspect they'll be evenly matched and it'll be a tussle well worth watching.
Oh, it certainly will be. And of course, if the computer wants to work, Adam, it's joys of this. Out at Porirua Park, or Jerry Collins Stadium as it's called now, Jerry Collins Stadium, the great man, Jerry Collins, one of my favourite All Blacks, probably my favourite All Black. Northern United taking on Marist St. Pat's. Of course, Marist St. Pat's won the Harden Cup last year, which surprised a lot of people. With the team they had, they thought they would have been in the Jubilee Cup. And Northern United, who are the Jubilee Cup champions from 2019, are looking stronger than ever.
They certainly are. Norths have assembled a side that might be labelled stacked. They have recruited Ropati So'oialo, the young buck out of Aotea College, who was very unlucky to miss the New Zealand secondary schools team last year. They've also gained Rion Paul, who was the linchpin of the Rongotai midfield in 2019. Rion helped carry Rongotai all the way to the semi-finals for the first time since 2016. Fafila Levave has returned at the opposite end of the age spectrum. AJ Vailepu is back. He scored 5 tries against Porneki in the 2011 Jubilee Cup semi-final. Campbell Woodmass, Bruce Kawika Peterson, Keenan Higgins, Lossie Filippo, Parakura Lalanga, the whole gang is back at North, so they look incredibly strong indeed. And when I say G, Jared Fafatoa, well, yes. Who could ever forget his display in the Jubilee Cup final last year? The Richter scale's still shaking out there at Petone. And MSP, though, they've got a strong team too.
Yeah,
we watched them in pre-season last week. James Proctor, who didn't look like James Proctor with that haircut, played very nicely and ran their backline from second five very efficiently. Inside Aidan Morgan, who's a good young prospect, arrived from Auckland. But the MSP forwards are going to have to confront Norse physically, and that might be a challenge because even though MSP have a good pack, it's a young pack. Tom Martin is the captain, only his second season of Premier Rugby. And look out for the Thompson twins. Leo actually plays in the back, but might actually venture in close contact to carry because he's so big and effective. And Tyrone Thompson was one of the standouts for the Wellington under-19s at hooker last season.
And of course, the Marist St. Pat's Premier Reserves look just as strong. And there's a few players that have former Premier players that have come back to play for that side.
Well, they've won 23 games in a row over the course of 2 years, so that suggests that there's a lot of depth at MSP, although I understand there's no Colt side at MSP this year, which is a setback for the Catholics. But MSP reserves have a number of players who are familiar faces in the senior competition. The two locks, Nick Harrison and James Zeno, have returned. So MSP, if they do run into injury hassle with their Premier side, have quite a lot of depth to call upon.
And of course, the last game to round out round one of the Swindale Shield is Old Boys University versus Paniki at Nairnville Park. And of course, we saw Paniki play Marist St. Pat's last week. Very youthful side. There's some key players back for them. It might be hard work for Paniki this year. Who knows? But Old Boys University, well, we always know what Old Boys University are going to be like, Adam.
Very strong Old Boys University. Had a hit out against Petone. It was fairly even, but OBU, I understand, had the better of the three quarters overall. The thing about OBU is their loose forward trio looks particularly formidable. Seamus Langton and Caleb Delaney from the Wellington under-19 program last year will slot in alongside Tariki Ben Nicholas, who I understand is perhaps back from the Highlanders. I have to clarify that. And then in their backline, OBU always have a lot of threats. Porneki last Saturday were earnest competitors without having the polish or the pace to knock over MSP, but Greg Foy will return for them. He's doing a lot of coaching this year with St. Pat's Town. Nalo Tafali is back, and they've got some good young players in their backline as well.
Of course, we'll be covering, as mentioned earlier, Huddy Boys Marist and Oriental Rongotai at the Polo Ground at 2:45. We'll be online in some capacity via Huddy Sports on Facebook by about 2:30 p.m. on Saturday. And of course, Adam, Super Rugby kicked off for the weekend. We won't talk about the Hurricanes. It wasn't a good display of rugby. But there were 60 penalties across 2 games. 60 penalties across 2 games. Of course, we said last week that the referees were going to go harder. What 60 penalties? What's going on?
Go hard, go early, and let's hope it doesn't happen again. That's been the mentality with the COVID virus. Let's hope it's the mentality with the whistle as well. It was a strange spectacle in regards to the penalties on Saturday and Sunday. Yes, there were 60 penalties across the 2 games, which means essentially 60 minutes of stoppages. By the time the referee blows his whistle, the players assemble into position, the infraction is explained, and the next play proceeds. You lose the best part of a minute in that process, but the actual speed of the game itself was a lot quicker, and it seemed like there was more space on the field, and there were some thrilling tries scored, none more brilliant than Dane Cole's dash for the corner against the Blues. But also, how ironic was it that a guy called Ash scored the first try of Aotearoa Super Rugby, and also there was that beautiful moment where Bryn Gatlin kicked the drop goal from the car park to defeat the team that his father coaches. And it's not the first time that Bryn Gatlin's kicked a drop goal to win a game. He did it for North Harbour, ironically, against Otago in Dunedin in the 2016 championship final. He also did it in a national top 4 final, dramatically, at Hamilton Boys High School. They beat St. Kenneth's College by 12-10, and that snapped a winning streak for St. Kent's of 51 consecutive games.
That was an incredible statistic indeed, and we'll see what Super Rugby does this weekend, Adam. Of course, the Hurricanes playing on Sunday against the Crusaders. The Crusaders' first hit out. Of course, tough assignment. But to finish up the Hui tonight, the day in history, the 17th of June, is quite a famous day, Adam, isn't it?
The 17th of June, 1994, is perhaps the most dramatic day in sports history, and it's topical because it involves an episode which later had significant ramifications on racial conversation in America and perhaps around the world as well. But the 17th of June 1994, which is now a feature of an ESPN 30 for 30 movie, was the day that Arnold Palmer played the final round of his US Open career. The FIFA World Cup kicked off for the first time in the USA in 1994. The New York Rangers, who had won the Stanley Cup for the first time in 54 years, had their street parade. Game 5 of the NBA Finals, also involving the New York team, was played against Houston, but the O.J. Simpson car case topped them all.
Right,
Can you imagine sitting down to watch all those dramatic sporting moments, and all of a sudden there's a high chase scene on a motorway with the most famous African-American football player of his era being run down by the police, and then, of course, that triggered off the extraordinary events of the O.J. Simpson case. The 17th of June 1994, a momentous day in sport, a momentous day in race, and how apt to mention that in these bizarre times.
Well, Adam, it's we always know you have a fantastic sporting knowledge, and it's not just rugby. It's many things. And so thank you, as always, coming on the Huddy Hui, and thank you all for watching the Huddy Hui tonight, episode 9. Of course, after this show, you can listen to the Huddy Hui not only on YouTube, on the Huddy Sports YouTube channel, but you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
Look out, Joe Rogan.
Watch out, Joe Rogan, and Google Podcasts, and hopefully very soon we will be on iHeartRadio. So things are happening. So have a good rest of the week, and listen out for us from 2:30 on Saturday when Adam Julian and Brad Hudson bring you Huddy Boys Marist and Oriental Rongotai at the Polo Ground. Ciao for now.